In this episode of Beer Canic's Garage, I'm going to tell you the 5 things I dislike about my Audi S3. Alright, let's go. Better get the car started and go to a quiet spot where I can tell you the 5 things I dislike about my Audi S3. So one thing I dislike about my Audi S3 is how the sport mode change gear way too quickly. So if you look, go up, you barely need to stay at 3500 RPM and the car will automatically upshift, which is not ideal. You can see, if you put your foot down a bit more, he'll wait 4500 RPM before he actually upshift. But you know, it makes a lot of assumption on how you're traveling. You know, the amount of throttle doesn't necessarily mean the amount you want to hammer. If you're in a corner, you might want to keep your throttle at a specific position, but still stay in gear, so you can take your so you're in gear when you pop out of the corner. Here, if you did it in automatic mode, you'll probably switch to, let's say, for example, gear number 4. Careful here, a bit tight, here we go. So you will go to gear number 4 like he did here, at 4500 RPM. And then when you're at the exit of the corner and you put your foot down, he will actually drop to 3rd gear, which, you know, is not the best. So, you know, a bit disappointing, you know, because dynamic, it behaves a bit like dynamic. All it does is the gear change and the downshift are a bit more often. So, you know, it does try to put you in gear a bit more often, but when you actually push, you know, personally I think it should leave you in gear for longer. I mean, obviously, if you drive in manual, that is not a problem at all. In manual, the automatic upshift only kicks in if you get close to the red line, so it's purely a safety thing. Let me take that corner and I'm going to let you know what another dislike of mine is when it comes to driving, and one that is probably common for a lot of Audi S3 owners is basically the start-stop system. Great system, don't get me wrong. If you're in a traffic jam or in town or everything, you know, I highly encourage actually put it on. You know, it's not because you have a performance car that, you know, you should kick CO2 as much as you can all the time. It's not always appropriate or needed. But the one thing that really bugs me about it is the fact that it simply won't remember the setting. You know, so let's say you disable your start-stop. If you switch off your car and then you go back into your car later, start it on again, start-stop will be on again. Instead of, you know, just keeping the memory of what your last setting was, so that if you prefer to start with having it off and then just enabling it when you want to use it, you can. You know, and right now you can't. Also, if you drive in sports mode, it's not that much of an issue. If you drive in sport or manual mode, the start-stop system is off anyway. So to be honest, I used to start driving in dynamic. Generally, I start my drive in dynamic, always ended up at the arrival in sports mode. But now I generally always drive it in sports mode or manual mode. Basically, leave it in automatic sport if there is a lot of traffic and I'm going to have to change gear a lot. But when I want to actually control the power and control the performance of it, I go manual. The most annoying thing probably about the Audi S3 is the soft rev limiter. If you don't know what a soft rev limiter is, it's basically a limiter that is set by Audi when you're either in park mode or in neutral that limits the amount of RPM your engine can actually go at. So for example here, check around, there is nobody. If I am in park, so I'm in park, and if I wanted to rev, nice, I get pops and bang, but as you've seen, it goes up to 4000 RPM and I cannot go past that point. So basically what that means is that you cannot rev to the red line, which doesn't really, redlining your car in neutral on park is obviously probably not the best thing for it, but if you have a performance car, that's something you kind of like to do. So if we try again, see, doesn't even go up to the 4000 RPM. So you can still get some pop and bangs, but yeah, kind of wish could actually revline it. This is something you can actually do if you go to stages or you get your transmission tune. Some of the companies offering tune for your transmission actually offer the ability to remove the soft limiter. Something that we will probably do, and I'll make sure to make you hear what it sounds like without a rev limiter. Already sounds good, at least they still make it pop and bang at around 3500 RPM, so you get to enjoy it, but still. Another very annoying thing about the Audi S3 is the fact that it doesn't remember the mode in which you started. And by that, I mean it will remember most modes, so if you go for dynamic, comfort or full automatic, it remembers that fine. But if you go into sports mode, like we are on now, so if we look, we are on sports mode, we'll switch off the car. We'll wait a bit for that biker to come through. Then if I go and start the car again, put it into gear, and we are, as you can see, D1. So I personally like to only drive in sports mode. I used to drive in dynamic, but I got used to the sport mode, and when you switch back to dynamic, it just feels weird. Like you're lacking power. But yeah, so every time you start your car, you've got to take your lever, press it down. Now you're in sport mode. I would really prefer it if, every time I start the car, it will start in sports mode. That means it will actually start with the exhaust valve open as well, which, will give it a bit more grunt when you actually start up your car. And the last thing that is annoying about my Audi S3, the last top 5 things that annoy me about the S3. To be honest, there isn't that much to it. On all the points I've mentioned through the video are rather minor points, otherwise I still wouldn't have the car. And basically it's the fact that there is no exhaust button. So if you go in sports mode, your valve will open and stay open. If you are in any other mode, your valve open only based on your RPM. So if you're in dynamic mode, for example, if we go in dynamic now and we go in neutral, makes a bit of noise, but if you actually go back, sorry, I keep looking because I don't want to scare somebody on their bike or whatever, but if you then go in sports mode, I'm going to wait for that car to pop through as well. Then if you have it in sport mode, a lot louder. I just wish there was a button so that you could just choose to be, you could be in sport mode with your valve closed, or you could be in any mode and just have your valve open. A lot of the reason having the power right under your foot is why I drive in generally sports mode or manual, but I often put it in sport mode just purely for the sound as well. Some performance cars just got a little button, and I think that is probably what would have been the best. Here you go, guys. That was 5 things I dislike about my 2017 Audi S3. Make sure to like, follow, subscribe, comment. Have you got an Audi S3? Have you got things you dislike that were not in this video but you would like to mention? Comment below. Follow us on Instagram. We are also on Twitter now. We are on Facebook. And obviously, click the bell icon so you get the notification and you don't miss any of our video. Anyway, guys, bye!